In this tutorial, I'll cover exactly how to properly implement a for loop. Make sure you are working in the correct source code file. To be safe, shut down all open source code editor windows and together we'll open our LabMaster source code file. So let's jump right in and get started. In our example, I'll show you how to significantly reduce the required amount of typing when updating button feedback. The first step when building a for loop is to create a variable to use as a counter. Here inside our feedback timeline event, I'll just create a stack var variable integer called nLoop. Remember we moved all of our single line feedback statements out of define program and into this timeline. Now we can go one step further and place a single line of code inside a for loop to minimize the number of lines of code we're writing. You may recall from an earlier lesson that we mentioned how dangerous it can be to place a for loop directly into define program, and that this is the reason we always use single line feedback statements there. Now, since we're inside of a timeline event, this is no longer a concern because the for loop only runs as often as the timeline event is triggered. Therefore, instead of using a line of code for every button, we can simply reference the index of the array of the button numbers and replace the channel number with the counter nLoop. The first thing I'll do is comment out the single line feedback statements that we used for the set-top box. Remember, you never provide feedback to the same button in multiple places in the code. I'll highlight all of these lines, go up to Edit, Advanced, and select Block Comment/Uncomment to comment them out. Next, I'll go just above those commented out lines and write the for statement. To do that, we use the keyword for, then open a set of parentheses. We start with the name of our iteration variable, nLoop. Now we assign it an initial value of 1 with the gets operator and a semicolon. Remember, this statement is called the initializer. Next, we need the conditional statement, which will be evaluated each iteration through the loop. Since there are 7 buttons we are providing feedback to, we set the condition as nLoop less than or equal to 7, so that it only runs 7 times and the value of nLoop never exceeds 7. Now another semicolon and we add the increment statement. Since the channel numbers are consecutive between 1 and 7, we can just add 1 each run through the loop using the increment operator. Close the parenthesis and the loop is complete. Now open a set of curly braces and place the code that will execute every run through the loop. Basically, we are just going to create a single line feedback statement that gets executed 7 times. Why don't you pause the video here and see if you can finish writing this statement without my help. Okay, how'd you do? Here's what you should have. Open square bracket, dvtp underscore stb, comma nLoop, close square bracket, gets, open square bracket, dvstb, comma nLoop, close square bracket. On the left side of the statement we use nLoop as our channel number, because the button numbers we are providing feedback for are 1 through 7. Next, of course, the gets operator, and then the device we are receiving the value from is always dvstb, and the channel number will be nLoop as well. It might be a good idea to walk yourself through a couple of iterations of the loop. I'll do the first one for you. Since nLoop starts at 1 and 1 is less than 7, we drop down inside the braces. The button we will update is channel code 1. Now, that button gets the status on or off from the dvstb channel status. Remember the old single line feedback statements used the snappy codes? Well, those are just constants for numbers 1 through 7. So the first time through the loop, we set the button to the status of dvstb channel 1, and once the statements inside the braces are done, jump up into the for loop again and increment nLoop to 2, and the whole process starts over again. Next up, we have another exercise for you to practice writing a for loop.